Hello everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, Could Your Employees Unknowingly Be Working for the Bad Guys? My name is Elise Bandy. I'm the marketing manager here at Acuity, and I'm joined by our CEO, Dan Dunn.
Hi everybody, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Before we get started, I'd like to address one housekeeping item. We will have time at the end of the presentation for question and answers. So throughout the presentation, if you'd like to submit any of your questions in the chat box above, we will get to as many as we can at the end. All right, so during this presentation, we will dive into the current threat landscape, detailing most of the most common attacks today. We will discuss what type of traditional defenses are inadequate, the 5 different approaches that organizations take towards security awareness, how the Know Before Security Awareness training program works, the value proposition, so your return on investment for implementing a training program, and finally, as previously mentioned, a session for question and answer. All right, so diving in, let's get started with the current threat landscape. Looking first at email-based attacks. Many of you have probably heard of phishing before, but for those who haven't, phishing is an attempt to obtain sensitive information by pretending to be a reputable source. And this most often through email. Often the email will tempt you to click on a link or open an attachment, and once you do so, a virus is immediately downloaded to your computer. So you can see here an example of an actual phishing email that someone received in their inbox. The email claims to have information regarding a recent Walmart order and asks the recipient to click on a link for more information. So to the untrained eye, this may seem legitimate. It has Walmart's logo, their color scheme. They actually went as far as to include a copyright at the end of the email. However, there are a few red flags, one of which is the verbiage used. The email is repetitive, it contains grammatical errors, but the biggest red flag would be the link right there in the middle of the email. So once you hover over the link, you notice that it goes to a strange URL and not Walmart's website.
You know, at least we see a lot of that with emails that are even more or better crafted than what we see here with the Walmart, including unsubscribe links, etc. So, 99% of the body of the email and subject line look legitimate, and when compared side by side with an actual one from a bank or from some other retail outlet, they look identical, but it could be something small as the unsubscribe. You hover over the unsubscribe, and that is actually going to send you to a malicious website as well. So you really have to be careful, and again, hovering over link is a great part of that. But even those who are really savvy can get tricked up pretty easily.
Absolutely. So moving on to spear phishing. So this is the same thing as phishing, except it's an email that's targeted at a specific individual or department, such as human resources. These are both very common email-based attacks that utilize social engineering, which is basically manipulation to get someone to perform an action or divulge confidential information. And you'll see a few recent stats over to the right. So 90% of data breaches have a phishing or social engineering component to them, and 91% of cyber attacks and the resulting data breach begin with a spear phishing email.
It seems like a lot of the hackers are patient as well, so they'll grab some information this week, next week they'll grab some more information, and they kind of build up a profile before they actually do a much more massive attack as well. So
exactly, they're getting a lot more targeted.
Yep.
As well. So a few other examples of email-based attacks. We have executive whaling, which is go after highly ranking individuals at a company, and CEO fraud is a scam in which cyber criminals spoof company email accounts and impersonate executives to try and fool an employee, such as in accounting or HR, to execute unauthorized wire transfers or sending out confidential tax information. So a recent report by the FBI indicated a 1,300% increase in losses from CEO fraud from 2015 to 2016. So I'm sure by the end of this year we can see that number increase as well.
Yeah, and so the threats are out there, and the real question is, what are the consequences? So we hear about ransoms being paid or computers being locked down. What does that all mean? And so there are thousands of ways that these attacks happen, and there's many different mechanisms for how these cyber criminals are getting paid. Probably the most common one that you see is, again, some sort of a ransom. So it's either a lockdown of computers, it could be encryption of files that you can't access until you pay some sort of money to the hackers. But the end result is your data is at risk. And I think a lot of small business owners think that, hey, this isn't going to happen to me. All the money's in, the big guys like the Targets and the Home Depots and the high profile companies that make the front page of the newspaper. But in actuality, there's a lot of money to be made in smaller increments of, $500 to a few $1,000s for a small business to release all of their files. So we could see that, you get the phishing attack, all of a sudden your computer gets encrypted, your files are locked down. The only way that you can get your money, or the only way you can get your files back, is by paying a ransom, and then you do so, and then there's still a chance that even though you paid a ransom, that your files will not be released, the encryption files won't be decrypted, and that the hackers will even ask for more money. So again, big or small, it's really important to know that billions of dollars that are being paid in ransom is very lucrative. But again, you could be a small business owner and have the same effect as the larger enterprise. So again, the key there is don't put your head in the sand. Some real world examples. So one of them was WannaCry, which happened in May of this year. And the WannaCry, what was extraordinary about it was just the growth and the speed at which the attack took place. Many hospitals and financial institutions were affected by WannaCry, and the contributing factor was an exploit that was known by the NSA and by Microsoft. There was a patch that was released for the WannaCry exploit, I think back in February, March, at least, does that sound about right? Like February, March?
March.
Yeah, so machines, computers, Windows operating systems needed to be updated, and for those who didn't update, or for those who had older operating systems like Windows XP that didn't have updates but were still using them as part of their business, they were all exposed to the threat of WannaCry. So again, the concern was that it spread like wildfire, locked down many, many hospitals as well as other institutions, and affected hundreds of thousands of computers. And so the threat there is significant. I think one of the things that were important there too, though, is many of the people who were affected by WannaCry reported that after they paid the ransom, that there was no unlock codes or no way to get their data back. So I think, again, high profile because it spread quickly, and then also the fact that the damage wasn't able to be undone in many examples, or many of those scenarios. Kind of moving along to another example was a DocuSign phishing attack. And what this was a breach. DocuSign didn't release all the details of what the breach was, but the customer database for DocuSign was affected. And then you saw a flood of spoof emails that were to legitimate DocuSign users. So actually at Acuity, we use DocuSign for a lot of our agreements with our clients. And you could imagine if you see a bunch of legitimate emails or legitimate looking emails going out to the clients that we do business with Acuity logo, letterhead, everything looks great, and you're going to go ahead and click on a link for a agreement that you need to sign, and everything looks great, information looks legitimate, because of the hackers got more information than one would expect, and it turns out that it's not. So again, high profile like WannaCry, more specific targeted like DocuSign, and then we can just imagine what will happen next month in the future. So very important to be aware and be the first line of defense. So kind of actually going back to first line of defense, traditional defenses are only part of the picture, and so the issue that we're looking at really isn't just an IT issue. You think about spam filters and antivirus software and firewalls, and all these mechanisms that are put in place to protect your business. And they're all critically important. They have to be maintained. They have to be current. The IT team needs to be doing their job. But the truth is that the social engineering, the targeting email attacks, there is so much that your employees can do within the business as well to protect your organization, that it is really important to focus on bringing your team up to speed on what they need to know in order to help the company protect itself from hackers. We talk about the first line of defense and how important it is. It is that because most of the attacks that happen start with an employee unknowingly bringing a threat into the environment, and then the IT team has to respond. All right, Elise.
All right, so moving on to the different types of approaches to security awareness training that companies take. So as we go through these, I want you to think to yourself, where does your company lie along this spectrum? So we're going to go from least secure to most secure. So the first approach would be the do nothing approach. That's what Dan just mentioned, would be just, simply applying spam filters, antivirus, but no actual training is involved for employees. Next, we have the break room approach. So death by PowerPoint. This would be usually in-house created, where pretty much employees would be sat down to watch a PowerPoint presentation. Very informal.
The concern there too is like the break room approach is also so passive that if senior leadership team is not engaged with their employees to say, hey, look, security is important to our business, a PowerPoint slide and presentation one time is not going to be consistent with the actual message the way it needs to be delivered. It's got to be an integral part of the company.
Right, definitely. So moving on from the passive approach to a little bit more aggressive, but sort of middle of the spectrum. So the monthly security video. This is where employees are viewing monthly short security awareness training videos, very high level, pretty basic, but only on a monthly basis. And then we move on to a little bit more of an aggressive approach, so the phishing test approach. This is where high-risk group of employees are pre-selected. They're sent a simulated phishing attack, and then you pretty much see who fails. So this determines their phish-prone percentage, so how at risk you would be for one of these employees clicking on an email.
It's interesting too, at least like most of the phishing reports that we do for clients or the exercises we do, generally there will be like a CEO, CFO, and they'll be like, hey, go ahead and run this, I'll be fine, most of my C-levels will be fine, but I have a feeling that it might be like accounting or marketing might actually fail the test. And time again, when we run these phishing tests, we get the results in, and the truth is that a lot of senior leadership are the ones who are opening up these fake emails and clicking on links they should not. So if you think you're in that small percentage of better, you'd be surprised when the reports come back how many times it's affected everyone at all layers in the company.
All right, so we are moving on to the most secure approach that you could take to security awareness training, which we call the human firewall approach. So this is where all employees are trained online and sent frequent phishing attacks. So this is, it's important to find out the initial phish-prone percentage for your employees, but that only means so much. Threats are constantly evolving, and you need to make sure that your employees are evolving as well and are constantly aware of what to look out for.
Yeah, so the human firewall approach, as Lise mentioned, is so important in training of your team members. You can't have a secure organization without having your team trained, but not one time. I mean, it can't be one video, it can't be one PowerPoint presentation. It has to be something that's consistently evolving. And the reason it's so important, and the reason it's so important to keep this in front of your employees, is that as the security threat landscape continually increases and evolves, the new threats that come out might catch up your team. So when we look at executive buy-in in the organization and how it's so critical, I keep going back to the CEOs can't put their head in the sand. It is because you have to practice what you preach. And so when we looked at educating our clients, we said, okay, well, we have to partner with a company who really does security awareness training better than anyone else. And so when we did our search, we came across a few, and KnowBe4 was a company that stood out in top of the bunch. They are one of the world's most popular integrated security awareness training and simulated phishing programs. So not only do they provide the training videos, but they're also integral into all the phishing testing and all the reporting that you get as well. And we liked about them is that they're former employees, and the CEO are all former employees of ex-antivirus companies as well as other security professionals. So these guys not only, they walk the walk, they talk the talk, they know, and are constantly investing in, what other threats are out there and how do they integrate that within their training. And we talk about the organizations that they help with social engineering, awareness training. So when you go through the videos, not only do you and your team come out better for awareness around security, but then the input that they're gaining from their customers are also being integrated in future training seminars as well.
So how the Know Before Security Awareness program works. First we have baseline testing. This is what I had previously mentioned, is where you determine the phish-prone percentage of your users through simulated phishing attacks. Next would be train your users. So users have access to a large library of security awareness training content, such as videos, newsletters. You're really able to decide what content you would like to use for training. It could be on an employee basis as well, what they feel would be most beneficial to them, how they learn best. And then we have phish your users. So a baseline test is performed, but then it's important to continue these simulated attacks to keep employees on their toes at all times, and to ensure that improvements are made. So with the Know Before platform, you're able to fully automate this process, and detailed but easy to understand results are reported at the end to show your progress.
Yeah, I think that baseline reporting is also great too, right? Because you can kind of see where your entire team is starting. And then as you go through either weekly, monthly, quarterly, however the training is rolled out within your organization, you really get a good sense of, how effective it is. So even at Acuity, like we're all security experts and we know better, but if we had some infractions and we look at, we start a program this month, let's say it's, January, we start at the beginning of the year. And then we look at our reporting again in April, we'll be able to see not only, what improvements we made, but if there are still some areas where people are struggling within the organization, we could then even customize some of the Know Before training specific to those team members to make sure that they brush up on areas that, maybe they were a little bit weak on or gaps that we identified. So the benefits of security awareness training are significant, and you might be asking, well, great, but what are the true benefits, or what is the proposition, the return on investment for investing in security awareness training? Well, one of them would be reduced malware infections or self-inflicted type occurrences. If your team is up to speed on how to spot threats when they come into email, a little more savviness around the threats of sites like Facebook and other ads and other websites that might be malicious, cutting down the amount of infections will greatly increase the chances of your company remaining secure. We talk about data loss. We went through some of the examples around encryption of files from a ransomware attack. The fact that you could pay the ransomware and you still never get your data back is huge risk to your business, to your integrity of your business. Again, we want to keep you off the front page of any newspaper for any kind of negative news, and keep your data secure. We talk about the potential for cyber threat. So it's one thing to have your data locked down and have your network compromised, but if you think about the amount of information that could happen when this information falls into the wrong hands. And you also look at external threats, like recently with the Experian data breach. You have external forces of other companies who are not doing their part in making sure that they're secure. And now you have millions or hundreds of millions of people who have been affected. So you start putting all this information together, it really gives those cyber criminals a good picture of who you are and could take these threats much more deeper or much further within in the attack sector. So keeping users and security awareness on top of mind by doing a recurring training, as Elise pointed out, having a PowerPoint once a month or once a quarter is not good, but having some sort of mechanism for not only doing the recurring training, but also making sure that you're doing the phishing test to keep everyone on their toes. We talk about maintaining integrity with your clients. If you're going to make the front page of a newspaper like Cranes, then we want to make sure that it's positive about expansion for your business or something else that's going great for the organization, not how you were the one who was breached. Significant impact to your business and revenue, and countless millions of dollars that could go into remediation to affect your business and in many cases put people out of business. The downtime and increased productivity is huge, and there really is that return on investment. For every dollar that you're investing now is that much more that you're not going to be paying out in ransomware down the road.
All right, thanks, Dan. That just about wraps up our presentation. So Right now we can get into answering a few of your questions that you've submitted. So let's see what we have. First one would be, is the training subscription based? The answer to this is yes. The pricing information that you will see on our website is for a 1 year subscription, but we do offer a 3-year as well. So if you have any questions about that, just make sure to contact us and we can get you the right pricing.
And I think also, at least, there's different subscription levels too, right? And so the price sheet also includes the various
Correct.
levels as well. So,
Correct. There
okay.
are different levels, gold, platinum, silver, depending on what features you'd like to be included.
Cool.
Next we have, how often should I run a phishing test on my employees? I'll probably refer to Dan on this one.
Yeah, so there's no exact answer for every company. And so what I would look at is, at the very minimum, you want to run a phishing test in some segment of your team or your employees once a month. And so if you do the whole company every month, well then, once the first few people get a phishing test or they know that they've got something that popped up, they're going to alert the rest of the company and it loses its effectiveness. So I would say that, like at Acuity, we do our phishing tests at least once a month, but we do segments either by departments or by, employees A through F are this month, and then we go G through whatever and do that each month. But the idea is that you constantly want to go ahead and run these tests to keep people on their toes. There's a lot of new threats that are happening, a lot of changes in the security landscape, a lot of email phishing scams, a lot of web phishing scams. So the more frequent that you do the phishing test, the more you can certify and see the results of the team improving on their security awareness.
All right, so let's see. How do I know which employees have taken the training and which haven't?
So the thing is, you want me to take this one, Elise?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the dashboard that is set up as part of your Adobe 4 training, you have all the analytics real time in who is taking what segment. And I think we talked about this a bit, but you could also then customize the training curriculum for your team so that they're not watching all the videos, they're not doing all the interactive workshop type stuff, but that they're doing things that are very applicable to areas that maybe the team is failing in, so that you could quickly address those areas. So reporting, analytics, all different types of information is available real time, and then you could also do executive summary reports, which shows the history of users taking the tests, and then how they've done throughout the past quarter or so.
All right, so next question, could you show a demonstration of how the Know-Before platform works? The answer to that is absolutely. Just make sure to reach out to us by phone or email, and we'd be happy to set up a call to show you a demonstration of the platform, the different reports that you can see.
I think we also talked about doing like a recorded type video that we could post on the website too, so that's something you might see down the road, which is just kind of like a little tutorial of how that all works. So we'll get that up. In fact, we'll do that by the end of the year. So
definitely. All right, it looks like that is all of the questions that we have for today. So thank you everybody for joining us, and again, please reach out if you have any other questions.
Yep.
Have a great week.
Hey, thank you everybody. Bye-bye.